In the summer of 2015, the careers of two legends of the mixed martial arts community were under intense scrutiny. Nick Diaz and Anderson Silva, who had faced each other earlier in the year, had both tested positive for illicit substances. Diaz had had an unacceptable amount of marijuana in his system, and Silva had tested positive for various steroids. For both fighters, most of 2015 was devoured by hearings and further testing. In the end, Silva would be suspended for 1 year and fined a significant amount of his winnings, a fairly typical consequence for this kind of infraction. But on September 14, 2015, the Nevada State Athletic Commission announced that Nick Diaz would receive a 5-year suspension from the UFC, along with significant fines. A crushing, contentious, potentially career-ending blow to a beloved fighter. Fans, fellow fighters, and the media exploded with frustration, rising to Diaz's defense. But the damage had been done.
It's awful, and it just shows how bad the Nevada State Athletic Commission is. And they were angry because he took the fifth because he didn't want to talk about it. The fucking guy passed 2 World Anti-Doping Agency tests, 2 WADA tests that are blood tests. They're way more accurate than the fucking urine test that Nevada State Athletic Commission gave him with Quest Diagnostics, you know? And nothing against Quest Diagnostics, but that method of testing is not as accurate.
Right.
So the dude was within the realm. I mean, he was legal. He passed. And they try to steal. They're stealing money from him, and they're suspending him for 5 years. They're a fucking kangaroo court.
The suspension would later be shortened, but Diaz would remain on a purgatorial hiatus for his own reasons. He would give an interview here and there, but would not fight. Fans worried about his health. His interviews were stilted, strange, rambling. The 5 years of his original suspension went by, and many assumed he would never fight again. But in 2021, something stirred, woke up, and Nick Diaz, a man known for his scrutiny, his authenticity, his nuance, emerged from the shadows, scheduled to make his triumphant return to the cage for the first time in over 5 years. The Ultimate Fighting Network proudly presents Nick Diaz, a UFN documentary. If you know anything about Nick Diaz, you know about Stockton, California, the place of his birth, the epicenter of his soul. Nick Diaz was born and raised in Stockton, where he first discovered karate, aikido, and wrestling. Nick and his brother, fellow UFC fighter Nate Diaz, were raised with a singular devotion to their mother, to each other, and to their hometown, Stockton, California. An unlikely place for a superstar to come from, let alone 2 of them. Nick Diaz studied Sambo and Jiu-Jitsu, followed the careers of his UFC heroes, and dreamed of becoming a worldwide fighting sensation. Even in the pain of his young adulthood, he continued to hold to that dream. When he was 17, visiting the grave of his girlfriend, who had died tragically by suicide, Diaz promised her every single day that he wouldn't give up, that he would become the fighter he always dreamed of being, that she had always urged him to become. He promised. This is Nick Diaz, a figure of both bright savagery and shadowy corners. Even then, this was Nick Diaz as he would always be. At age 18, Diaz made his professional debut and won by submission. 1 year later, he became the IFC welterweight champion. After a few years with IFC, in 2004, Nick Diaz found himself fighting for the then fledgling UFC for the first time against Robbie Lawler, who was also just getting his start, sending ripples through history that neither of them could predict. No one knew it yet, but the world was about to meet and fall in love with a rather mysterious character in the oldest Diaz brother. In the early days of MMA, fighters were more likely to bounce around from promotion to promotion, following the money. Nick Diaz was definitely no exception. In the first phases of his career, he fought for the IFC, UFC, Pride FC, Elite XC, and Strikeforce, before he finally returned to the UFC again. And all throughout, he built his reputation around not only being a talented fighter, but also around just being himself. Being yourself is a double-edged sword, and no one knows better than Nick Diaz. As a fighter, he is controlled, well-rounded, savage, and highly conditioned. He is famously obsessed with his health, a volume puncher with variable power, and ferociously insulting with his trash talk both in and out of the cage. He's also fiercely loyal to his brother, his family, and the reputation of his birthplace. In interviews, Diaz often seems a bit lost, but he's always sincere. He never flinches from what he's going to say, but he confesses to feeling anxiety in public situations. He has been known to skip press conferences and interviews, and he infamously disappears for days and weeks at a time. Often unintentionally hilarious, Diaz shoots from the hip and says whatever comes to mind. This aggressive sincerity is what makes Nick Diaz a favorite among fans, who dearly love his personality, but also made him a thorn in the side of the UFC and its regulators. As proponents and users of cannabis, Nick and Nate Diaz both have been on the wrong side of marijuana testing before. But Nick's suspension in 2015 was clearly an unmitigated blow to his psyche and left the fighter floundering. For over 5 years, he did not fight, leaving fans to wonder if they would ever see him fight again. And when they did hear from him during that time, he was not the fighter they knew. He seemed lost and filled with sorrow.
But I got a lot done. And I did it exactly what I was supposed to be doing, just the way I should have been doing it at the exact right time. So, and looking back, I'm like, I made no mistakes. Like, I never have. I can tell you paint you the picture, tell you the story, no problem, of course. Of course, that's just because that's what it is,
In 2021, it was announced that Diaz would be returning to the octagon and facing none other than Robbie Lawler, that fresh-faced young fighter he knocked out back in 2004 as his return to the promotion. Fans rejoiced to see something they never thought they would ever see again: Nick Diaz returning to the cage. But questions linger. Why did Diaz stay away for so long? What is he hoping to achieve by coming back? And why Robbie Lawler? The only person who knows the answer is Nick Diaz. But perhaps it has something to do with that 17-year-old kid in Stockton visiting his girlfriend's grave. Promises were made, and promises need to be kept, no matter what. The life of a fighter is a life of glories, tragedies, triumphs, and tumbles. To be a great fighter is to take them all in stride, face them with dignity and savagery, and keep moving. Nick Diaz is a favorite among fans because he has only ever been himself. No fronts, no fakery, no flash, just pure Stockton brilliance. Whether he's in the cage, in the press conference, or in the shadows hiding away from the world, he's only ever doing what comes naturally to him to do. No matter what comes from his return to the octagon, whether victory or defeat, fans the world over will celebrate Nick Diaz because he came back. He promised he would be the best fighter he could be, and he kept his promise to himself, to his family, to Stockton, and the world by coming back. This has been a UFN production. Like, share, and subscribe to the Ultimate Fighting Network for more documentaries just like this one. Thank you for watching.